Hey, I'm Tim Malloy from Movie Maker, and today I'm talking with director Sylvia Kaminer about her new film, Follow Her, which stars Dani Barker, who also wrote the film, as a young woman who is a cammer/influencer and is hired by a handsome weirdo, played by Luke Cook, to help him finish his screenplay. There are lots of meta twists and surprises in this very Hitchcockian take on everyone's favorite genre, the psychosexual thriller. Sylvia Kaminer, what a pleasure to talk with you about Follow Her. I got to check out this movie at the Heartland International Film Festival. Loved it. Super engrossing. A lot of twists on a sort of familiar format. Can you just explain to people what Follow Her is?
So Follow Her is it's an indie film. It is a psychological, we kind of say an erotic psychological thriller. And it's about a young woman who kind of finds herself and like her worth online. She's put a lot of emphasis, and that she makes her living by secretly filming wacky jobs she finds online, and she doesn't have the permissions of the people she's filming. So it questions a bit about what's going too far for likes and follows, and it gets kind of creepy. She takes a job with someone who is very alluring, kind of tall, dark, and handsome Australian man, and maybe follows him into a world where, you would say run, but for this, sometimes we blur what's safe and not because we become a little bit desperate. So it's an erotic thriller about a young woman who goes a bit too far online. And it kind of, I also like to say it's almost a cautionary tale about social media and what could even be happening now, or like in the foreseeable future, down in the dark and, ways maybe you don't want to go.
Yeah, there's fascinating stuff about voyeurism because people are watching her as if she had like an OnlyFans account. But then there's other aspects about accountability and anonymity where she's blurring the faces of her clients. Mm-hmm. But I guess the instigating incident is that she forgets to blur one of their faces and things get bad.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a glitch or something. But yeah, it's a very quick moment. But yeah. Yeah. And you learn kind of about this other world, which we won't say too much because it's a bit of a spoiler, but yeah.
Yeah. So you made documentaries before, and you've made documentaries about Tanzania, about travel. I know you love travel, mm-hmm. and about Rick Springfield.
Yes.
So at some point you start looking for feature scripts, or feature scripts start finding you. Is that how Follow Her?
Yeah, it is. So I quite honestly, I thought I would have directed a narrative feature 10 years ago. But, in this business, you make a living, you have to. So I was always working. I haven't had to work outside the field. So, but I work a lot. I produce other, a lot of first time filmmakers and experienced filmmakers. And then I do the travel show. But I had put a real point of finding a script. I've written a couple, but I didn't have something that I felt was right now and ready to go. So I started really reading scripts. And I met Dani through John Gallagher. She had reached out to him. Dani Barker wrote the screenplay. She had reached out to him. She heard him on a podcast, a filmmaking podcast, and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm looking for a director." She was in New York at the time. She's like, "He sounds perfect." So she reached out to him. And the funny thing is that she says to him, "I'm fully funded. I'm shooting in 6 weeks." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm booked. I can't do it, but you should have he had read the script. You should have a woman do it anyway. So talk to Sylvia. She should direct it." So of course, when Dani called me, she wasn't fully funded. We shot about 14 months later. But I loved, we did a lot of work on the script, but the core was all there. She's a wonderfully talented writer. Yeah. And she had a great concept for a film. And there was I read it. And I will say, of course, fully funded, shooting in 6 weeks. Great. That got me, but I pretty soon realized that that wasn't quite where we were with the film. But there was a lot there. I was like, God, a female protagonist who isn't perfect. I love flawed characters because I don't know, I haven't met anyone that isn't flawed. And, and right now, because of where we are with, women and trying to have better diversity between, male and female. And I feel like we might be tending to idolize or like put up on pedestals women. And I think that's not healthy. Yeah. So I liked a female protagonist that you would question, that wasn't perfect, that you'd even think, well, I'm not sure I'm rooting for her. She's doing some really morally objectionable things. And, but yet she fights. You know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be interested in a woman who was just objectified or, you know, didn't fight back. And she's a strong, headstrong, you know, woman who makes choices and lives by them. And so that was really compelling. And you know, after talking with Dani, I could tell we would collaborate well together.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just kind of jumped off the cliff and decided to trust each other. Because for me, it was a big leap of faith because she wrote it for her in the starring role, and I'd never seen her, you know, do anything. So I started to research a little bit of her body of work, but she's a young, new actress. But she had to also jump off and have confidence in me. I hadn't directed a narrative film, and so I think she probably did her research, and we very quickly knew we would jive. And so, yeah.
Well, I also love actors who, for whatever reason, figure out what part they want to play, and then instead of trying to
Mhm.
find that part, go out and write that part. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I know. I tell because, you know, acting, I mean, directing is really hard because there's only one director per film and there's, you know, more actors, but still actors. I tell actors that all the time. So many of the wonderful actors I went to college with, I'm like, gosh, they just weren't lucky. They didn't, you know, get there and they find little jobs. But I'm always saying, gosh, if you can write, if that is a skill, write, because as the writer, you hold all the clout. I mean, it's your property, you know, so yeah.
You know, the other thing, I think I've seen this billed as a psychosexual thriller. And usually when you see that, you're talking about Skinamax or something, and this isn't that at all.
No.
At all. It's very smart. And I think one of the benefits of her writing it and starring in it is that with a lot of those types of movies, sometimes you're like, did the actors have to do this? Like, are they being put in an
Right.
uncomfortable position? And she's not. She's putting herself in all these positions.
Right. Yeah, that was, and I will say that first draft I read was way riskier. I
Mm.
think it probably would have been NC-17. So Dani was very comfortable. She, you know, as an actor, she can blur those lines. She's very comfortable. But I knew first off in the marketplace, I didn't think that would be wise. And it wasn't necessary. I am definitely in the school of less is more.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's because I love classic old films.
Mhm.
And, you know, you look at someone like, you know, Hitchcock or even like John Ford, all the great old time directors, you know, even De Sica, like even the Italian great, you know, you don't have to do so much. You don't have to show so much. You don't have to have blood, you know, gore. There's a place for gore and horror for sure. That's
Yeah.
probably not my first preference for the type of film I would make, though I do watch some. So yeah. So yeah, it's definitely just an R, but it's not even a hard R. There's a lot, you know, language and stuff, but